Welcome to another episode of the Afro-Global conversation, where we discuss all global issues from an African perspective. A few months ago, we engaged in a discussion about the possibilities of Kenya winning the United Nations Security Council and permanent member seat. Today, we are discussing it after the Kenya has won overwhelmingly in the United Nations Security Council. Now, today's discussion is going to be centered on the 10-point agenda, what Kenya promised. Can they really deliver on what they promised? And I'm joined today with my good friend, Mr. Onesmus Ogoti, a master's student at the University of Nairobi Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies, and a very good policy analyst. Mr. Ogoti, would you just give us a few comments on the winning and the build-up to the winning of the United Nations Security Council and permanent member for Kenya, which Kenya is going to serve for the 2-year term until 2022, and also just go beyond and tell us why is it important for Kenya to be there?
Sure, I will not speak as an insider in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, but as a very interested party in whatever was going on. But having read various things that the insiders have written, like an article by the Foreign Affairs Permanent Secretary Macharia Kamau, it was quite a brutal campaign, because you see Kenya was endorsed by the AU, and then you get a competitor just from the bloc. It was an important win for multilateralism and for Kenya's credentials in the world stage and for Africa at large. So about the expectations, Kenya made it clear that it has a 10-point agenda to push for at the UNSC as a non-permanent member. But now, of course, you know, as a non-permanent member, you don't have much to advocate for or to influence whatever is going on because of the veto powers and so on. But this comes at a very crucial time when the whole world is speaking about UN reforms. I think now Kenya should, and the other parties, the other winners like India, should push for the UN reforms and also build up the consensus towards having permanent seats for these other members. Of course, this is wishful thinking, but it is possible since we see multilateralism is facing a lot of challenges because many states, even the powerful ones, are calling for reforms. But fundamentally, the issues at hand are the 10 points agenda. How is Kenya going to advocate for them or to achieve them at the UNSC? Yes.
I agree. Just that I just want to understand the issue of the UN reform, because I'm sure you're aware of the processes that were there and the people and the countries that were there during the formation. And you remember there were only 4 African countries at the time. The others, they came after. And when that United Nations Security Council was being formed, it was only being formed by around 5 members who are the permanent members.
Sure.
These other reforms, they came in 1960s, late in 1960s. And ever since, the African countries, the developing world entirely, they've all been advocating for the same thing, which is reforms, but it seemed to be very difficult for them to push for an agenda that will lead to the expansion of that council.
You know, when we speak about the reforms from the past history, whatever you have spoken about is we were curtailed because we were colonized, right? And then we came and got these people had gone ahead, or these states. Now we have the numbers in the UN, but numbers don't matter because one state like US can influence the whole world. But with our numbers, how united can we become to push for these reforms? What matters is the power or the influence. Of course, you have the numbers, but you don't have the power. You just have one single vote. But one state comes with a veto vote, and it overturns everything for its own interest or the interest of the world in some cases.
Let me peddle an hypothesis.
Yeah.
You tell me whether it can work in terms of how that council can be expanded and probably what needs to be done.
Sure.
And in my opinion, the council is one of the most undemocratic institutions or organs of the United Nations that has ever existed. It is very mean and it is very small, and it's small for a reason. And if you go to the Article 108 of the Charter and Article 109 of the Charter, the Article 108 does not allow, it only allows for an amendment to the Charter to be done after all the 5 permanent members have agreed. But see, that has been a very big challenge. Maybe from 1990 to around 2000, many of the resolutions that were passed in the United Nations Security Council, most of them were unanimous. But after that, things have shifted, where most of the time we see US on one side with our European counterparts, and Chinese and Russians on the other side. And that has been quite unattainable. And there's always been one challenge, and that challenge has been the United States, because we say he who pays the piper plays the tune, calls the tune. Most of the time, US is the biggest funder of the organization. And I remember in just late 1990s and early in 2000s, when Bush was threatening not to fund the United Nations, and it was actually not very functional. And after that, the reform agenda has been there, just that countries like US, they're not comfortable. The holders of the veto powers are not comfortable enlarging this, because once they enlarge it, that power will diffuse and to go to many people. Once it goes to many people, and that means people will not be able to push their agendas within the council as they wish. So my hypothesis is, because the US is a problem, and it has been the stumbling block in the entire time. What if this power can be shifted through the numbers, through the General Assembly, to Chinese and other countries in the East who have power, who have enough resource, who can now direct their resources more and play a more critical role in this organization, because US has been the driving force behind the institution. Or if we can have another entity like the Chinese, like the Indians, like the BRICS coming together and pushing this agenda, that means then the US will not have any say, and the council can be expanded. But again, that's an hypothesis. It does not hold a lot of water.
The hypothesis, speaks to the crafters of the UN Charter. Thought of it very carefully. See, these power struggles are very ingrained in that legal framework. Like you need a majority, whatever.
Yes,
you see
the
US has the influence.
and everything. Yes.
But also you have saying who will to shift the power, who shifts the power in the international system.
In terms of numbers, the Chinese, they decide to take up the leadership role.
Yeah, you decide to take. Even Kenya would want to be the superpower.
At one
but
point,
how do you
we
work?
desire.
But how do you work towards shifting those numbers, towards whatever you want to influence? You see, now it's a game of a lot of politics, economics, military.
And game of numbers as well.
The UNSC is such a very careful blend of realism and liberalism at the same time.
Okay, let's move very quickly. Let's talk about some of the key pointers in the 10-point agenda. Let's talk about the issue of peace and security, because that's an area that I think Kenya would come in very strongly to support, knowing that Kenya comes from a continent that has been alien from conflicts. If you look from Darfur to Somalia to DRC to Central African Republic to some parts of West Africa to Cameroon, we are all seeing the same problem. And the problem is conflicts. And most of the time we seem not to be able to get the support that we need from these institutions that its primary role is to maintain international peace and security. What do you think? Would Kenya be able to go and push for more attention to be given to African countries?
Of course, with the non-permanent membership, you'll have some chairmanship in some committees within the UNSC. So Kenya should re-engineer its foreign policy to this reality that now you are serving as an unpermanent member of the UNSC, to push for its, it has an history, a good history in peace and security matters in Africa and beyond. So Kenya should just project it further, let it be visible, and let it push for more Africa Union involvement in peace and security issues in Africa. There's this principle of subsidiarity, whereby before the AU does something, you must seek some consensus from the UNSC. Now we need to see a more active permanent and security council of the AU without fundamentally agreeing to everything that the UNSC
What about our PSC, our own PSC, our own peace and security architecture in Africa still seems to be very dysfunctional. It's not playing a very critical role. Do you think, what can Kenya do? Because as much as Kenya is pushing in New York, we still need this body here at home functioning.
No, Kenya is also a member of that PSC.
Yeah, Kenya is a member, yes.
So we need fundamentally the principle of subsidiarity, whereby we must seek some acceptance from the UNSC in everything that we do. This thing should shift. We should seek more of independence, but independence with conformity with whatever the UN Charter wants, so that we can have rapid and very fast response to our conflict systems. Of course, Africa leans towards more of Pacific settlement of these disputes. So that's what we can do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogoti, for your time, for joining us. Thank you very much for our views. Please stay tuned for more on our channel. Thank you.